The woman's lips were blue. Caroline Harrison crouched in the narrow alley behind the shopping center, her hands trembling as she pressed them against the homeless woman's ice-cold face. Snow fell steadily around them, coating the cardboard shelter that had provided almost no protection from the brutal Denver winter night. The temperature had dropped to 8 degrees, and the wind cut through the darkness like frozen knives. "Stay with me," Caroline whispered, her breath creating small clouds in the frigid air. "Please stay with me." The woman's eyelids fluttered. Her breathing came in shallow, irregular gasps. She wore 3 threadbare sweaters layered over each other, none of them thick enough to matter. Her fingerless gloves exposed skin that had turned a frightening shade of gray. A thin blanket, soaked through from the snow, lay crumpled beside her. Caroline had called 911 3 minutes ago. The dispatcher said help was coming, but 3 minutes felt like hours when someone was dying in front of you. She stripped off her own wool coat, a burgundy cashmere piece that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and draped it over the woman's shaking body. Then she sat down right there in the snow, pulling the woman close to share what warmth she could. "My name is Caroline," she said, rubbing the woman's arms vigorously, trying to get blood flowing. "Can you hear me? What's your name?" The woman's cracked lips moved. A sound came out, barely audible over the wind. It might have been Helen. "Helen? Is that your name? Helen, you're going to be okay. Help is coming. Just stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me something. Anything." But Helen's eyes were closing again. Her breathing grew more labored. Caroline felt panic rising in her chest, a sensation completely foreign to someone who had never wanted for anything in her 26 years. She had been shopping just 4 hours ago, trying on dresses for another meaningless charity gala. She had been warm. She had been comfortable. She had been ignorant. Now she was holding a dying woman in an alley, and nothing in her privileged life had prepared her for this moment. "Please, God," Caroline heard herself saying, though she had not prayed in years. "Please don't let her die. Not like this. Not alone." The sound of sirens cut through the night. Red and white lights painted the alley walls as an ambulance turned into the narrow space. 2 paramedics jumped out, their movements quick and professional. They had blankets, equipment, warmth. They had hope. "Step back," one of them said, a young man with kind eyes. "We've got her now." Caroline moved aside, but did not leave. She watched them work, wrapping Helen in thermal blankets, checking her vital signs, loading her onto a stretcher. The whole process took less than 5 minutes, but Caroline memorized every second. This was real. This mattered. This was the opposite of every empty, hollow thing she had done for the past 26 years. "Are you family?" the female paramedic asked as they prepared to load Helen into the ambulance. "No," Caroline admitted. "I just found her." "You saved her life," the paramedic said simply. "Another hour out here, and she would not have made it. You're a hero." Caroline shook her head. Heroes did not drive past homeless people every day without seeing them. Heroes did not live in mansions while people froze to death blocks away. Heroes did not need a crisis to develop basic human compassion. "Can I ride with her?" Caroline asked. "I don't want her to be alone." The paramedic hesitated, then nodded. "Come on." Caroline climbed into the ambulance. As they pulled away from the alley, she looked back at the cardboard shelter, the soaked blanket, the empty space where a human being had nearly died while the world walked past. She thought about her heated car, parked illegally at the curb. She thought about her penthouse apartment, where she had been heading when she noticed something huddled in the shadows. She thought about her father, who had built an empire on Denver real estate while people slept in alleys behind the buildings he owned. Something shifted inside her in that moment. Something broke open. Later, she would struggle to explain it. But sitting in that ambulance next to a stranger who owned nothing, Caroline felt more awake than she had in her entire life. At the hospital, doctors rushed Helen into the emergency room. Caroline gave the intake nurse what little information she had. No, she did not know Helen's last name. No, she did not know if Helen had family. No, she did not know anything except that this woman was a human being who deserved to live. "We'll take good care of her," the nurse promised. "You should go home, honey. Get warm. You did a good thing tonight." But Caroline could not leave. She found the waiting room, and sat down in an uncomfortable plastic chair. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages she ignored. Her father would be furious that she missed that dinner meeting. Her friends would wonder where she disappeared to. The gala committee would need her approval on centerpiece choices. None of it mattered anymore. She thought back to earlier that afternoon, before everything changed. She had stopped at a grocery store, a rare deviation from her usual routine of having everything delivered. While paying for organic vegetables she probably would not eat, she noticed a woman in line behind her, counting coins with shaking hands. The woman had 3 children with her, all under 10 years old. When the cashier told her the total, the woman's face fell. She was short by $12. Without thinking too much about it, Caroline had stepped forward. "Let me get that," she said, sliding her credit card across the scanner. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I can't accept that. I couldn't." "Please," Caroline said. "I want to help." The woman hesitated, pride warring with necessity, but finally nodded. "Thank you. God bless you. You don't know what this means." But Caroline did not know. Not really. She had spent $12 the way other people breathed. It meant nothing to her except a momentary feeling of satisfaction. She left the store already forgetting the encounter, already back in her bubble of privilege. Then, driving home past the shopping center, something made her look twice at the alley. Maybe it was divine intervention. Maybe it was coincidence. But she saw the cardboard shelter, and she saw a hand reaching out from beneath it, and she could not drive past. Not this time. She had parked her car and walked into that alley, and her life had changed forever. Now, sitting in the hospital waiting room at 2 in the morning, Caroline understood what that woman in the grocery store had meant. God bless you. Not because Caroline was special. Not because Caroline was good. But because sometimes, on certain nights, ordinary people are positioned to do extraordinary things. And if they pay attention, if they act instead of walking past, everything changes. A doctor emerged from the emergency room 3 hours later. Caroline jumped to her feet. "Are you here for Helen Miller?" he asked. Caroline nodded, relieved to finally know her full name. Helen Miller. A real person with a real name. "She's going to make it," the doctor said. "Severe hypothermia, frostbite on several fingers and toes, malnutrition, but she'll survive. Thanks to you. If you had not found her when you did, we would be having a very different conversation." Caroline felt tears running down her face. "Can I see her?" "She's sleeping, but yes. Room 247. Just for a few minutes." Caroline walked through the sterile hospital corridors until she found the room. Helen lay in the bed, connected to monitors, wrapped in heated blankets. Her face had regained some color. Her breathing was steady and strong. She looked peaceful. Caroline stood there watching her sleep, this stranger who had somehow become the most important person in her world. She thought about privilege and poverty, about coincidence and providence, about the thin line between life and death. She thought about her father, who had built his fortune on the suffering of people like Helen. She thought about herself, living in luxury while blocks away people froze. She thought about the world as it was and the world as it should be. And she made a decision that would change everything. Caroline Harrison had never questioned her life before that night. She woke each morning in a penthouse apartment overlooking downtown Denver, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Rocky Mountains like a painting. Her closet held designer clothes, still bearing tags. Her refrigerator stayed stocked by a service that delivered organic meals 3 times per week. Her days unfolded in a predictable pattern of yoga classes, lunch meetings with friends, committee work for charities she barely understood, and social events that all blurred together into one endless performance. Her father, Thomas Harrison, owned half of downtown Denver. Harrison Properties was a real estate empire built over 35 years, turning empty lots into office buildings, shopping centers, and luxury apartments. Forbes estimated his net worth at $2.3 billion. Caroline was his only child, raised by nannies after her mother died when she was 7. She loved her father but rarely saw him. His work consumed him completely. Thomas provided everything Caroline could want except his time. She drove a Tesla he bought her for her 25th birthday. She held a vice president title at Harrison Properties, though her actual duties involved attending ribbon-cutting ceremonies and approving marketing materials. Her signature appeared on company documents, but she wielded no real power. She was an ornament, beautiful and expensive and ultimately useless. This awareness had been growing inside her for months, a quiet dissatisfaction she could not name. Her therapist called it existential anxiety. Her friend said she needed a vacation. Caroline knew it was something deeper, something broken at her core. The morning after finding Helen, Caroline woke on a couch in the hospital waiting room. Her neck ached. Her burgundy cashmere coat was ruined. Her phone showed 47 missed calls. She stood up, stretched, and walked to the nurse's station. "Helen Miller," she said. "Room 247. How is she doing?" The nurse checked her computer. Stable. Awake. Asking for food, which is a good sign. "Can I see her?" "IU family. I'm the one who found her. I stayed with her last night." The nurse's expression softened. "Room 247. Knock first." Caroline walked down the hallway, her heart beating faster than it should. She had no idea what to say. How do you talk to someone whose life you saved? How do you bridge the gap between her world and Helen's? She knocked gently. A weak voice said, "Come in." Helen sat propped up in bed, looking small against the white pillows. Someone had washed her face and combed her gray hair. Without the dote and desperate circumstances, Caroline could see the woman beneath the hardship. Helen had been beautiful once. She still was, in a worn and weathered way. "You came back," Helen said, her voice hoarse. "Of course." Caroline pulled a chair close to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but alive. The doctors said you saved my life." Caroline shook her head. "I just found you. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," Helen said firmly. "Most people walk right past. You stopped. You stayed. You gave me your coat." She paused. "That was a nice coat. Expensive." "It's just a coat." "Not to someone who owns 3 sweaters." They sat in silence for a moment. Caroline studied Helen's face, trying to imagine the journey that led her to that alley. Helen studied Caroline right back, and Caroline wondered what she saw. A rich girl playing hero? A privileged princess slumming for stories to tell at dinner parties? "What happened to you?" Caroline asked quietly. "How did you end up out there?" Helen looked away, at the window where morning light streamed in. "Long story. Boring story. Same as everyone else's, probably. Life happens. Things fall apart. You lose a job, then an apartment, then your family stops calling. One day you wake up and realize you're invisible." "You're not invisible," Caroline said. "Not to me." Helen turned back to face her, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "Why are you here? Really? You did your good deed. You can go home now. Feel good about yourself. Tell your friends about the homeless woman you rescued. You don't owe me anything." The words stung because they contained truth. Caroline could leave. She should leave. Her father was probably sending people to find her. Her phone kept buzzing with messages. The real world, her world, demanded her return. But she did not want to return. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "I'm here because I want to be," Caroline said simply. "I don't have anywhere else I'd rather be right now. Is that okay?" Helen's hard expression cracked. Tears filled her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered. "That's okay." A nurse arrived with breakfast, a tray of hospital food that smelled better than it looked. Helen ate slowly, carefully, as if her stomach needed time to remember how to process solid food. Caroline watched, thinking about the meals she left half-eaten, the food she threw away without thought. "You mentioned family," Caroline said. "Are they in Denver?" Helen's hands stopped moving. She set down her fork. "I had a daughter, Jessica. She's probably 30 now. I haven't seen her in 8 years. After her father died and I lost the house, she said I was embarrassing her. Said I needed to get my life together. When I couldn't, she cut me off. Changed her number. I don't blame her. Do you want to find her?" What would I say? "Hi, honey, sorry I'm still a mess. She's better off without me." "I don't believe that," Caroline said. "I think she probably misses you every day." Helen laughed bitterly. "You don't know anything about my life." "You're right. I don't. But I know something about missing people. My mother died when I was 7. Cancer. My father threw himself into his work and never came back out. I have him, but I don't have him. It's not the same as what you went through, but I understand loss. Helen looked at her with new eyes. I'm sorry about your mother. I'm sorry about your husband, and your daughter, and everything else. They sat together in comfortable silence after that. Caroline learned that Helen had been a nurse before everything fell apart. She learned that Helen loved crossword puzzles and mystery novels. She learned that Helen had tried repeatedly to get back on her feet, but every time she climbed up, something knocked her back down. Bad luck, bad timing, bad circumstances. The system was not designed for people to recover from rock bottom. Around 10 in the morning, Caroline's phone rang with a number she could not ignore. Her father. I need to take this, she told Helen, stepping into the hallway. Caroline. Her father's voice carried its usual commanding tone. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. I'm at Denver General Hospital. What happened? Are you hurt? No, Dad. I'm fine. I'm here with someone who needed help. Silence on the other end. Then, who? A woman I found freezing to death in an alley last night. Her name is Helen Miller. I stayed with her through the night. More silence. Caroline could picture her father in his office, trying to process this information. Thomas Harrison did not do spontaneous. He did not do unplanned. He certainly did not understand his daughter camping out in hospital waiting rooms for homeless strangers. Come home, he said finally. We'll discuss this in person. I can't leave her alone. Caroline, you have responsibilities. The Mitchell proposal needs your signature. The gala committee is waiting for your input. You cannot just disobey. I'll come by the office later, Caroline said. But I'm not leaving yet. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands shook slightly. She had never defied her father before. She had never defied anyone. Her whole life had been about meeting expectations, fitting into the role assigned to her, being the perfect daughter of a perfect billionaire. But something had shifted in that alley last night. Or maybe it had shifted earlier, in the grocery store, when she saw a mother counting coins. Or maybe it had been shifting for months, years even, and she had finally reached the breaking point where the old life no longer fit. She went back into Helen's room. The breakfast tray sat empty. Helen looked exhausted but more alive than she had hours before. You should go, Helen said. I'll be fine. They are going to move me to a recovery ward later today. I'll be here a few days, they said. Then I'll come back tomorrow, Caroline said. If that's okay with you. Why would you do that? Caroline thought about her answer. She could say something noble, something about human compassion and moral duty. But Helen deserved honesty. Because I don't want to go back to my old life, Caroline admitted. Because sitting with you feels more real than anything I've done in years. Because maybe helping you helps me too. Helen smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. That's the first honest thing you've said. Come back if you want. I'd like that. Caroline left the hospital and drove through Denver in the harsh morning light. The city looked different somehow. She noticed people on corners, holding signs. She saw the makeshift camps under overpasses. She saw the invisible people her privilege had trained her not to see. Her father was right. She had responsibilities. But maybe those responsibilities were not what she had always thought. Maybe being Thomas Harrison's daughter meant something more than attending galas and signing documents. Maybe having $2.3 billion in the family meant owing something to people who had nothing. By the time she pulled into the parking garage of Harrison Properties headquarters, Caroline had made a decision. She did not know exactly what it looked like yet, but she knew her life was about to change. The only question was whether her father would fight her or join her. She took the elevator to the top floor, preparing for the conversation that would alter everything. Has wealth ever blinded you to the struggles happening right in front of you? Think about Caroline's awakening and how one encounter changed her entire perspective. What would you do in her situation? Subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is just beginning, and you won't believe what happens when Caroline confronts her billionaire father. Thomas Harrison's office occupied the entire top floor of the downtown building that bore his name. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Denver stretching toward the mountains. The furniture was Italian leather, the art on the walls original pieces worth more than most homes. Everything spoke of power, success, and control. Caroline's father stood by the windows when she entered, his back to her. Thomas was 6'2", tall and trim from daily workouts with a personal trainer. His silver hair was perfectly styled. His suit probably cost $5,000. He looked like what he was, a man who bent the world to his will. "You look terrible," he said without turning around. "I slept on a hospital couch." "What did you expect?" "I expected you to answer your phone. I expected you to remember your commitments. I expected you not to disappear in the middle of the night without explanation." Caroline sat down in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I found a woman dying in an alley, Dad. What was I supposed to do? Leave her there?" Thomas finally turned to face her. His expression was hard to read, something between anger and confusion. "You called 911. That was appropriate. Staying at the hospital all night was not. We have people for this sort of thing. Social services. Charities. That's why we donate to them. We donate to charities so we can feel better about ourselves while doing nothing real," Caroline said. "When was the last time you actually met someone those charities help? When was the last time you saw where people sleep when they can't afford our apartments? Is this about guilt?" Thomas moved to sit behind his massive desk. "Because I built this company from nothing, Caroline. Everything we have, I earned. I don't apologize for success." "I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to see what's happening in the city you own half of. I see plenty. I see economic development. I see jobs created. I see property values rising. That helps everyone. It doesn't help Helen Miller." "Who?" "The woman I found freezing to death behind the Riverside Shopping Center. You know, the one Harrison Properties owns." Something flickered across Thomas's face, too quick for Caroline to identify. He picked up a pen from his desk, set it down again. "One person. You're talking about one person. One person who almost died while we lived in luxury. How many more people are out there right now, Dad? On our properties? In our city? How many more Helens are we ignoring? What do you want me to do, Caroline? House every homeless person in Denver? That's not realistic. It's not my responsibility." "Then whose responsibility is it?" Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying his daughter with an expression she could not read. The silence stretched between them. Outside the windows, Denver went about its business, unaware of the confrontation happening in the tower above. "What changed?" Thomas asked finally. "This isn't like you. You've never cared about these issues before. Maybe I was never paying attention before. Or maybe I was paying attention to the wrong things." Caroline leaned forward. "Dad, do you remember why Mom loved you?" Thomas's expression closed off. He never talked about Caroline's mother. "That's not relevant. She told me once, before she got sick. She said she loved you because you were kind. Because you saw people, really saw them. She said you had the biggest heart of anyone she ever met. That was a long time ago. What happened to that person?" "He grew up," Thomas said harshly. "He learned that sentiment doesn't build empires. He learned that success requires difficult choices. Like walking past people dying in alleys." "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. When did you stop being the man Mom fell in love with?" Thomas stood abruptly, walking back to the windows. Caroline watched his shoulders, seeing tension she rarely noticed. Her father wore his power like armor, but underneath, she wondered what remained of the man he used to be. "I want to use my trust fund," Caroline said into the silence, "to help Helen and people like her." "Your trust fund is for your future, for security." "I'm secure, Dad. I have more than I could ever need. Let me do something that matters." "Throwing money at problems doesn't solve them." "Then help me find real solutions. You're brilliant at business. Use that brilliance for something beyond profit margins." Thomas did not respond. He stood at the window, looking out at his city, his empire. Caroline wondered what he saw. Did he see the buildings he built, the deals he closed, the success he accumulated? Or could he see the people sleeping rough, the families struggling, the invisible population his wealth floated above? "I'm going back to the hospital later," Caroline said, standing to leave. "I'm going to make sure Helen has somewhere to go when she's discharged. With or without your approval." She was halfway to the door when Thomas spoke. "Wait." Caroline turned. Her father still faced the window, but his shoulders had dropped slightly. "Tell me about her. This Helen Miller. Who is she?" Caroline walked back toward the desk, but did not sit. "She's 61. Former nurse. Lost her husband, then her home, then her daughter cut contact. She's been on the streets for 8 years. She likes crossword puzzles and mystery novels. She has frostbite on her fingers from last night. And she's still alive because I happened to look twice at an alley. What do you want me to do?" "I don't know yet. But I want you to meet her. Really meet her. Talk to her like she's a human being, not a problem or a statistic." Thomas finally turned from the window. His expression was complicated, layers of emotion Caroline rarely saw on his controlled face. "When?" "This afternoon. I'll pick you up at 3. "I have meetings." "Cancel them. This is more important." She left before he could argue, taking the elevator down through the building her father built. Her hands were shaking. She had never challenged Thomas Harrison before. She had never demanded anything from him. Their relationship was polite but distant, formal but hollow. Today felt like the first real conversation they had in years. Caroline went home to shower and change. Her apartment felt wrong now, too big and too empty. She looked at her expensive furniture, her designer clothes, her curated life, and felt disconnected from all of it. This was not real. This was a performance, a role she played. The real Caroline had woken up in that alley, watching Helen fight for breath. At 2:45, she pulled up in front of Harrison Properties. Thomas waited on the sidewalk, a sight so rare that passing employees stared. Thomas Harrison did not wait for anyone. But today he stood there in his perfect suit, hands in pockets, looking oddly vulnerable. They drove to the hospital in silence. Caroline did not try to fill it. She had said what needed saying. The rest was up to him. Helen was sitting up when they arrived, working on a crossword puzzle a nurse had brought her. She looked stronger than she had that morning, color back in her face. When she saw Caroline, she smiled. When she saw Thomas behind her, the smile faded to weariness. "Helen," Caroline said gently, "this is my father, Thomas Harrison. Dad, this is Helen Miller." Thomas stepped forward, and Caroline held her breath. This moment felt huge, weighted with possibility. Would he treat Helen with respect? Would he see her humanity? Or would he revert to his usual distance, his armor of wealth and power? Thomas extended his hand. "Mrs. Miller, thank you for meeting with me." Helen looked at his hand like it might bite her, then slowly reached out and shook it. "You're the one who owns half of Denver." "That's what they say." "Must be nice." A small smile crossed Thomas's face. "It has its moments. Though I suspect it's not as impressive as having a daughter like Caroline here. She speaks very highly of you. We just met yesterday. Sometimes that's all it takes to recognize someone worth knowing." Caroline watched this exchange with growing hope. Her father was not performing. He was being genuine. She could hear it in his voice, see it in the way he pulled a chair close to Helen's bed and sat down like he had all the time in the world. "I hear you were a nurse," Thomas said. 23 years. Pediatrics, mostly. I love that work." "What happened?" Helen looked at Caroline, who nodded encouragingly. Then she told her story, the same one she had shared that morning. The death of her husband, the medical bills, the lost job, the downward spiral. Thomas listened without interrupting, without checking his phone, without the distant expression he usually wore. He listened like it mattered. When Helen finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that shocked both women. "I know what it's like to have nothing." Helen raised an eyebrow. "Do you now?" "A long time ago. Different circumstances. But yes, I do." Caroline stared at her father. In 26 years, he had never mentioned anything like this. His origin story, as far as she knew, involved business school and smart investments. He had never spoken of hardship or struggle. "Tell me," Helen said, her wariness softening to curiosity. Thomas looked at Caroline, then back at Helen. Whatever he saw in their faces made him continue. I was 19. My parents kicked me out for reasons that don't matter anymore. I lived on the streets of Chicago for 4 months. Slept in doorways, ate from dumpsters, did whatever it took to survive. One night, winter night like last night, I nearly froze to death outside a train station. He paused, and Caroline saw something she had never seen before. Her father's eyes filled with tears. A man found me. Never learned his name. He took me to a shelter, made sure I got medical attention, then helped me find a job. Just a basic construction job. Nothing special. But it was a chance. He gave me a chance when I had nothing. He saved my life. What happened to him? Caroline asked softly. I don't know. I tried to find him years later, after I made my first million. Wanted to thank him, to pay him back. But I couldn't track him down. So I told myself I would honor his gift by succeeding, by building something that mattered. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the most important part. What part? Helen asked. That it's not about the success. It's about the chance. It's about seeing people. Really seeing them. He looked directly at Helen. Like Caroline saw you. Like that stranger saw me all those years ago. The room fell silent except for the beeping monitors and distant hospital sounds. Caroline felt tears running down her face. She had never known any of this. Her father had never shared this part of himself. Mrs. Miller, Thomas said, his voice steady now, I can't change what happened to you. But I can make sure what happens next is different. Will you let me help? Helen's tough exterior cracked. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's a chance. The same thing someone gave me. Will you take it? Helen looked at him for a long time, decades of pride and pain warring on her face. Then, finally, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll take it. Thomas Harrison sat in Helen's hospital room for 2 hours that afternoon, asking questions and actually listening to the answers. Caroline watched her father transform before her eyes. Or maybe he was not transforming, but returning to someone he used to be. The polished businessman gave way to someone more human, more real. When they finally left the hospital, the sun was setting over Denver. Thomas stood in the parking lot, looking back at the building. I want to do more than help Helen, he said. I want to change how we do business. All of it. What do you mean? Harrison Properties owns 47 buildings in Denver. Office spaces, shopping centers, apartment complexes. How many of those buildings sit partially empty? About a third of our commercial properties have vacancy rates over 40%. And we do what with that empty space? Wait for tenants who can pay premium rents. Thomas nodded slowly. What if we did something different? What if we converted some of that space into transitional housing? Real housing, with support services, job training, medical care. Caroline's heart began to race. Are you serious? I don't know yet. I need to think about logistics, costs, impact. But yes, I'm serious about considering it. Helen shouldn't be a rare success story. She should be the norm. They drove back to Harrison Properties headquarters. It was after 7, but the building was still lit up, full of employees working late. Thomas led Caroline to a conference room and pulled up financial documents on the large screen. The Riverside Shopping Center where you found Helen, he said, manipulating spreadsheets. 60% vacant. Has been for 3 years. We're losing money on that property every month, waiting for tenants that aren't coming. What if we stopped waiting? What would the board say? The board works for me, not the other way around. But they'll fight this. They'll call it financial suicide. He looked at his daughter. Are you ready for that fight? Are you? Thomas smiled, and it transformed his face. I haven't felt this awake in 20 years. Yeah, I'm ready. They worked until midnight, sketching out possibilities. Thomas made calls to architects, to social service organizations, to anyone who might have expertise in transitional housing. Caroline researched successful programs in other cities. Together, they began to see a shape emerging from the chaos. This could work, Thomas said finally, sitting back in his chair. It would be expensive, controversial, and probably the riskiest thing Harrison Properties has ever done. But it could actually work. When do we start? Tomorrow. We'll need to move fast before I change my mind or someone talks me out of it. He looked at his daughter with something like pride. You did this, you know. You changed my mind. You reminded me of who I used to be. I just showed you what was always there. Thomas stood and walked to the windows overlooking Denver. The city sparkled below them, light stretching in all directions. I built all of this, he said quietly. But what does it matter if people are dying in alleys while I count my billions? It matters now. Because you're going to change it. We're going to change it, Thomas corrected. This is your vision as much as mine. Maybe more. Caroline joined him at the window. Father and daughter stood together, looking out at their city, beginning to see it not as property and profit, but as people and potential. Mom would be proud of you, Caroline said. She would be proud of both of us. They left the building together, something they had not done in years. Thomas offered to drive Caroline home, but she declined. She needed to think, to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. She needed to believe this was real and not just a dream that would evaporate in morning light. As she drove through Denver toward her apartment, Caroline took a detour. She drove past the Riverside Shopping Center, pulling into the parking lot and walking to the alley where she had found Helen. The cardboard shelter was gone, cleaned up by maintenance crews. But the memory remained, seared into Caroline's consciousness. This was where her life changed. This was where she stopped being Thomas Harrison's ornament daughter and became someone real. This was where divine providence intervened, positioning her to see what she had been missing, to act when it mattered most. She thought about the man who saved her father all those years ago in Chicago. That unknown stranger had created a ripple that led to a real estate empire, to Caroline's existence, to this moment. Now she and her father were creating new ripples. Who would they affect? How far would those ripples spread? Her phone buzzed. A text from her father, board meeting tomorrow at 10. I'm announcing the plan. Be ready. Caroline smiled. Ready. Yes, she was ready. For the first time in her life, she was completely, totally ready. She drove home and slept better than she had in years, dreaming of buildings transformed, of lives changed, of a city healing one person at a time. Tomorrow would bring challenges, opposition, doubt. But tonight, hope felt stronger than fear. The Harrison Properties boardroom felt different to Caroline that morning. She had sat through dozens of meetings here, always quiet, always decorative. Today she entered the room with her father, and together they commanded attention. 8 board members sat around the massive oak table. These were serious people, bankers, investors, lawyers, all deeply invested in Harrison Properties' continued profitability. They looked at Thomas with expectation and at Caroline with barely concealed condescension. Thank you for gathering on short notice, Thomas began, standing at the head of the table. I'm aware you all have busy schedules. This won't take long, but it's important. Let me guess, said Richard Morton, the board's senior member. This is about your daughter's homeless woman adventure. Caroline felt anger flare, but Thomas put a hand on her shoulder. Her name is Helen Miller, Thomas said calmly. And yes, this is related to her, but it's about much more than one person. He pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. Financial projections, architectural mock-ups, comparative data from other cities. He had been working all night. Harrison Properties is pivoting, Thomas announced. We're converting 5 of our most vacant commercial properties into transitional housing facilities. The Riverside Shopping Center will be first. Silence. Then, as if someone fired a starting gun, the room exploded. Absolutely not. Richard Martin's face turned red. Thomas, have you lost your mind? This is financial suicide, added Martha Keene, the CFO. Our shareholders will revolt. Those properties are assets, not charity projects, said James Sullivan. You can't just throw away value like this. Thomas let them talk, his expression calm. Caroline watched him, amazed at his composure. This was the Thomas Harrison she had always known, confident and in control, but now channeling that power towards something that mattered. When the board members finally quieted, Thomas spoke. Are you finished? Good. Now let me explain something. Those vacant properties are already losing money. The Riverside Center alone costs us $3 million annually in maintenance and property taxes, while generating almost zero revenue. Converting it serves both a humanitarian and a business purpose. But transitional housing? Richard shook his head. That's not our business model. Our business model is failing, Thomas said bluntly. Denver's commercial real estate market has shifted. Waiting for premium tenants who aren't coming is not a strategy. Adaptation is. There are other ways to adapt that don't involve homeless shelters, Martha argued. They are not shelters. They are transition facilities. Fully supported housing with job training, medical services, and pathways to permanent stability. And they'll be managed by professional organizations, not us directly. This will damage our brand, James said. Harrison Properties is synonymous with luxury and success. You're proposing we become synonymous with social services. Thomas leaned forward on the table. Let me tell you a story most of you don't know. 38 years ago, I was homeless, sleeping in doorways in Chicago, eating from trash cans. Nearly died from exposure one winter night. The board members stared at him in shock. Caroline realized her father had never shared this with his business partners. His origin story was always sanitized, professional, appropriate. A stranger saved my life, Thomas continued. Took me to a shelter, helped me find work, gave me a chance when I had nothing. I built this company with that chance. Everything we have, everything we've accomplished, started with one person caring enough to help. That's a touching story, Thomas, Richard said carefully, but it doesn't change the fiscal irresponsibility of what you're proposing. Fiscal irresponsibility? We're sitting on dying assets. I'm proposing we transform them into something that generates goodwill, tax benefits, and positive media attention while actually solving a problem. How is that irresponsible? Because it sets a precedent. Today it's 5 buildings. Tomorrow it's 20. Where does it end? It ends when we've done enough to make a real difference. It ends when this city doesn't have people freezing in alleys. You're being emotional, Martha said. This isn't like you, Thomas. This is sentiment overriding sound business judgment. No, Caroline spoke up, surprising herself. This is vision overriding stagnation. This is leadership instead of cowardice. The board turned to look at her. Richard's expression was dismissive. Ms. Harrison, with all due respect, you don't have experience in complex business decisions. But I have eyes, Caroline shot back. I see our vacant buildings. I see people suffering. And I see an opportunity to do something that's both profitable and right. Or are those things mutually exclusive in your worldview? Watch your tone, Richard warned. No, Thomas said sharply. You watch yours. Caroline is correct. This board has become risk-averse to the point of paralysis. You've been collecting dividends while our company stagnates. That ends now. You can't make this decision unilaterally, James said. The board has to vote. Then let's vote, Thomas replied. All in favor of the Transitional Housing Initiative. Thomas and Caroline raised their hands. No one else moved. All opposed. 6 hands went up. Martha and one other board member abstained. Motion fails, Richard said with satisfaction. Sorry, Thomas. But this is how democracy works. Thomas smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Actually, this is how corporate structure works. I own 53% of Harrison Properties. You all work for me. Consider this not a vote, but a courtesy heads up. The project moves forward with or without your blessing. You can't do this, Richard stood, furious. We'll fight you. We'll take this to the shareholders, to the courts if necessary. Try it, Thomas said calmly. In the meantime, construction begins next week. Caroline will oversee the project. Any questions? This is insane, Martha said. Thomas, please reconsider. Think about your legacy. I am thinking about my legacy. What do I want to be remembered for? Making money? Or making a difference? I choose the latter. He gathered his materials and left the boardroom, Caroline following. Behind them, the board erupted in angry discussion. Caroline felt exhilarated and terrified in equal measure. That went well, she said dryly. Better than I expected, actually. I thought Richard might have a heart attack. They are going to fight this. They'll make it difficult. Let them try. I didn't build this company by being popular. I built it by being right. Thomas looked at his daughter. Are you really ready to lead this project? It's going to be brutal. Media attention, public scrutiny, constant battles with regulators and opponents. I'm ready. This is what I was meant to do. Then let's get started. We have a lot of work ahead of us. They spent the rest of the day meeting with architects, social workers, and construction managers. Thomas had already lined up key partners, moving with a decisive speed that made him legendary in business. By evening, they had a timeline, 8 weeks to transform the Riverside Shopping Center from vacant liability to functioning transition facility. Caroline visited Helen at the hospital that night, finding her working on another crossword puzzle. Helen looked up as Caroline entered, her expression cautious. I saw the news, Helen said. Your father's announcement. That's because of me, isn't it? It's because of both of us. And because my father remembered who he used to be. People are going to hate him for this. Hate us. Probably. But more people will be helped than hurt. That's what matters. Helen set down her crossword. I want to help. When I get out of here, I want to be part of this. I was a nurse. I can do medical intake, train others, coordinate care. I can be useful. Are you sure? You need to focus on your recovery. Recovery for what? To sit around feeling grateful? No. Let me earn my second chance. Let me be part of something bigger. Caroline smiled. Then you're hired. First employee of the Helen Miller Foundation. You didn't name it after me. We did. Dad insisted. He said you represented everyone who needed a chance. The foundation should bear your name. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Why? I'm nobody. You're not nobody. You're the person who reminded my father why he started this journey. You're the catalyst that changed everything. Caroline pulled a chair close. Helen, do you believe in providence? In divine timing? I used to. Lost faith for a while there. Me too. But I think God positioned me to find you that night. And I think He positioned my father to remember his own past. And I think He's positioning all of us to do something that matters. That's not random. That's providence. Helen nodded slowly. Then let's not waste it. Let's make this count. They sat together planning. Two women from completely different worlds, united by a frozen night and a shared vision of redemption. Thomas Harrison scheduled a press conference for Friday morning, 1 week after Caroline found Helen in the alley. The media room at Harrison Properties filled with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers. News of the board meeting had leaked, and speculation ran wild about what the billionaire developer would announce. Caroline stood backstage with her father, both of them dressed professionally but not ostentatiously. Thomas had insisted on simplicity for this announcement. No flash, no show. Just truth. Nervous, he asked her. Terrified. Good. That means it matters. He squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. I want to. People need to hear from both of us. Helen Miller stood nearby, released from the hospital 2 days earlier. She wore a simple blue dress Caroline had bought her, her gray hair styled professionally. She looked nervous but determined. Thomas had insisted she join them on stage. This was her story too. Ready? The publicist asked. Thomas nodded. They walked out to face the cameras. The room fell silent as Thomas approached the podium. He looked out at the crowd, taking his time, letting tension build. Then he began. My name is Thomas Harrison. I'm the founder and CEO of Harrison Properties. Most of you know me as a developer, a businessman, someone who builds buildings and makes deals. But today I'm here to tell you a story you don't know. He told them about Chicago, about being 19 and homeless, about nearly dying in the cold, about the stranger who saved him. His voice never wavered, though Caroline could see the emotion behind his professional demeanor. That man gave me more than shelter. He gave me hope. He gave me a chance. And I used that chance to build something I thought would honor his gift. I created a successful company. I made money. I employed people. I told myself that was enough. He paused, looking directly at the cameras. It wasn't enough. Last week, my daughter Caroline found a woman dying in an alley behind a property Harrison Properties owns. That woman's name is Helen Miller. She's here with me today. Helen stepped forward, and cameras flashed. She looked strong, composed, nothing like the desperate figure from the alley. Mrs. Miller is a former nurse who lost everything through circumstances beyond her control, Thomas continued. She represents thousands of people in Denver alone who need what I needed 38 years ago. A chance. Not charity, not pity, but an actual opportunity to rebuild. He clicked to the presentation behind him, showing architectural renderings of the transformed Riverside Shopping Center. Today, Harrison Properties announces the Helen Miller Initiative. We're converting 5 of our vacant commercial properties into comprehensive transitional housing facilities. These will not be shelters. They will be communities offering stable housing, medical care, job training, mental health services, and pathways to permanent stability. The room erupted with questions. Thomas held up his hand. We're committing $50 million initially to this project. The Helen Miller Foundation, led by my daughter Caroline, will manage operations in partnership with established social service organizations. We expect to house and support 500 individuals in the first year, with plans to expand. Mr. Harrison, a reporter called out, some are calling this financial suicide. What do you say to shareholders worried about profitability? I say they should look at the numbers. We're transforming liabilities into assets. These vacant properties cost us money while generating nothing. The tax benefits, reduced operating costs, and positive community impact will actually improve our bottom line over time. This is smart business wrapped in human compassion. But what about your luxury brand image? Another reporter asked. Our brand is what we make it. I'd rather be known for changing lives than for empty buildings. Caroline. Caroline stepped to the podium. Her hand shook slightly, but her voice was steady. A week ago, I walked past homeless people every day without seeing them. I lived in luxury while people suffered blocks away. That changed when I found Helen. I realized that privilege isn't just about what you have. It's about what you do with it. She looked at her father. My father taught me to be successful. Helen taught me to be useful. The Helen Miller Initiative combines both. We're going to prove that business and compassion aren't opposites. They are partners. Ms. Harrison, a reporter asked, what do you say to critics who claim you're naive, that this is just a publicity stunt? I say watch us. Judge us by results, not intentions. In 6 months, we'll have people in stable housing who were sleeping rough last month. In a year, we'll have employment rates that prove this model works. Come back then and tell me it's just publicity. Helen stepped forward, and the room quieted. She had not been on the speaking agenda, but she had something to say. I was invisible, Helen said simply. For 8 years, people looked right through me. I slept in doorways, ate from trash cans, and nobody cared. Then Caroline stopped. She saw me. She saved my life. What the Harrisons are doing isn't just about housing. It's about seeing people. Really seeing them. That's what changes everything. The press conference lasted an hour. Thomas and Caroline answered questions, some hostile, some supportive. They announced that applications for housing would open in 6 weeks. They revealed partnerships with major Denver employers who committed to hiring program graduates. They showed detailed plans, budgets, timelines. Afterward, in the green room, Caroline collapsed into a chair. That was intense. It's going to get more intense, Thomas warned. The pushback starts now. Some people will love this. Others will hate it. There will be protests, lawsuits, constant media attention. Are you absolutely certain you want to lead this? Absolutely certain. Then let's get to work. The response was immediate and divided. By evening, social media exploded. Some people praised the Harrisons as heroes. Others condemned them as hypocrites, pointing out the irony of a billionaire solving problems his wealth helped create. Think pieces appeared within hours, arguing all sides. Thomas's board members leaked anonymous statements criticizing the decision. Shareholders filed complaints. Competitors whispered about Harrison Properties' instability. But donations to the Helen Miller Foundation poured in. Volunteers applied to help. Other wealthy Denver families reached out, asking how they could contribute. Caroline worked from dawn until midnight every day, coordinating construction, hiring staff, setting up systems. Helen worked alongside her nursing background invaluable for planning medical services. Thomas bulldozed through regulatory obstacles with the same ruthless efficiency he had always shown in business, just directed toward different ends. 6 weeks later, the Riverside Center opened its doors. The media swarmed the event. Cameras captured the first families moving into clean, furnished apartments. Reporters interviewed residents, many of them tearful with gratitude and disbelief. Caroline stood with her father and Helen, watching people carry belongings into their new homes. Some of them owned almost nothing. Others had a few bags. But all of them had hope, and that was everything. "We did it," Caroline said. "We started it," Thomas corrected. "Now comes the hard part, making it sustainable." He was right. The Helen Miller Initiative faced challenges daily. Some residents struggled with addiction, mental health issues, or conflict. Staff turnover was high. Costs exceeded initial projections. Critics pointed to every problem as proof the whole concept was flawed. But more people succeeded than failed. Jobs were found. Families reunited. Lives rebuilt from nothing. Helen personally counseled dozens of residents, her own experience giving her credibility no degree could match. She became the heart of the foundation, proof that redemption was possible. 3 months after opening, Helen made a phone call she had been building courage to attempt. She dialed a number she had memorized but not used in 8 years. "Hello." "Jessica," Helen said, her voice breaking. "It's your mother." The silence on the phone lasted so long Helen thought her daughter had hung up. Then, finally, a trembling voice asked, "Mom, is that really you?" "Yes, baby, it's me." "Where are you? Are you okay? I've been trying to find you for years, but I couldn't." Helen started crying, years of pain pouring out. "You were trying to find me." "Of course I was. Mom, I'm so sorry. I said terrible things. I was scared and angry and I didn't know how to help you. After you disappeared, I realized I pushed away the person I loved most. Please tell me you're okay." They talked for 2 hours, 8 years of silence dissolving in tears and apologies and love that had never really died. Jessica lived in Colorado Springs now, married with 2 children Helen had never met. She worked as a teacher. She had been searching for her mother through homeless organizations, never giving up hope. "I want to see you," Jessica said. "Can I come visit? Will you let me back in your life?" "Yes," Helen whispered. "Yes, please." They arranged to meet the following weekend at the Riverside Center. Helen told Caroline about the call, barely able to speak through her emotions. "She wants to see me. My daughter wants to see me." Caroline hugged her tightly. "Of course she does. You're her mother. That never changes." The reunion happened on a Saturday afternoon. Caroline gave Helen and Jessica privacy, but she watched through the window as mother and daughter embraced for the first time in 8 years. Helen's 2 grandchildren, ages 5 and 7, looked confused but excited as their grandmother knelt to hug them. "Is she really your mom?" the 5-year-old asked Jessica. "Yes, sweetie. This is your grandma Helen. I've told you about her." "She's pretty," the 7-year-old declared, and Helen laughed through tears. They spent the day together, walking through the center, Helen showing her family the medical clinic where she worked, the apartments where families were rebuilding lives. Jessica could not stop touching her mother, as if confirming she was real. "I'm so proud of you," Jessica said. "What you're doing here, helping people. You always had the biggest heart." "I lost my way for a long time." We all lose our way sometimes. The important thing is finding it again. Their reconciliation inspired other residents. If Helen could reconnect with her daughter, maybe they could repair their broken relationships too. The center started offering family counseling services. Several residents reached out to estranged relatives. Not all reunions succeeded, but enough did to prove that second chances extended beyond just housing and jobs. The Helen Miller Initiative began to ripple through Denver. Other business owners, inspired by Thomas's leadership, launched their own programs. A restaurant chain committed to hiring exclusively from the transition facilities. A local hospital offered free medical care to residents. A law firm provided pro bono legal services. Mayor Patricia Walsh visited the Riverside Center 6 months after it opened. She toured the facilities, met residents, and spoke with staff. Caroline gave her the full presentation: statistics on housing retention, employment rates, family reunifications, cost savings to the city. "This is remarkable," Patricia said. "The city's emergency services calls from this area have dropped 37% since you opened. That's significant. People with stable housing don't need emergency services as often," Caroline explained. "It's simple cause and effect. I want to partner with you. The city has resources, properties, funding. What if we scaled this citywide?" Within a month, Denver announced a comprehensive homelessness initiative modeled on the Helen Miller Foundation. The city committed $15 million and 3 properties. Other developers, shamed by Thomas's example, contributed vacant buildings. What started as one billionaire's redemption project became a citywide movement. Not everyone supported the changes. Property values in some neighborhoods decreased when transition facilities opened nearby. Some residents protested, fearing crime and decreased quality of life. Thomas and Caroline faced these concerns head-on, hosting community meetings and sharing data showing that crime actually decreased around the facilities. One evening, Caroline spoke at a particularly hostile community meeting in the Riverside neighborhood. Angry residents filled the room, many holding signs opposing the expansion of services. "These people need to go somewhere else," one woman shouted. "Not in our neighborhood. We have children here." Caroline stood at the microphone, looking out at the crowd. She thought about Helen, about her father's past, about the stranger in Chicago who saved a life. "They are your neighbors," Caroline said simply. "They've always been here, just invisible. We're not bringing new people. We're helping existing people. And about your children, do you want them growing up in a city that throws away human beings? Or a city that gives everyone a chance?" "That's easy for you to say," a man called out. "You don't live here. You live in a penthouse downtown." "You're right. I don't live here. But Helen Miller does. She's a resident at the Riverside Center. Former nurse, mother, grandmother. 8 years ago, she was sleeping in an alley. Now she's coordinating medical services for 200 people. Is she the kind of neighbor you object to?" Helen stood up from the back of the room. "May I say something?" Caroline gestured for her to come forward. Helen walked to the front, facing the hostile crowd with quiet dignity. "I understand your fear," Helen said. "When I was on the streets, people crossed to the other side to avoid me. They saw a homeless person, not a mother who lost everything. But I'm still Helen, still the woman who raised a daughter, worked 23 years as a pediatric nurse, volunteered at her church. I didn't stop being a person when I lost my house. I just stopped being visible." She looked around the room. "The center gives people like me a chance to become visible again. We're working, paying taxes, contributing. We're your neighbors. And maybe, someday, we'll be your friends. But only if you let us." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, a woman in the front row stood up. "I'm sorry," she said to Helen. "You're right. I was scared of something I didn't understand. Can you forgive me?" "Of course," Helen said. "Fear is natural. But it doesn't have to win." One by one, other residents stood. Not all of them, but enough. They apologized, asked questions, offered support. The meeting ended with several volunteers signing up to help at the center. Caroline watched it happen, marveling at Helen's courage and grace. "You changed their minds," Caroline said afterward. "No, I just reminded them of something they already knew. We all one bad break away from needing help. Compassion isn't charity, it's wisdom." The Helen Miller Initiative continued to expand. By the end of the first year, 7 facilities operated across Denver, housing 600 individuals. Employment rates exceeded 70%. Family reunifications happened weekly. The foundation had become self-sustaining, funded by donations, government grants, and surprisingly, profits from businesses operated by residents. Thomas Harrison's reputation transformed from ruthless developer to social pioneer. Forbes ran a cover story, "The billionaire who gave away his empire to save his soul." But Thomas brushed off the attention. "I'm not giving anything away," he told the interviewer. "I'm investing it differently. Turns out people are better returns than buildings." Caroline found her true calling leading the foundation. She worked longer hours than she ever had, but unlike her old life, every hour mattered. She knew residents by name. She celebrated their victories and mourned their setbacks. She became part of a community, not just an observer of one. Helen's story inspired a documentary that aired nationally. From Alley to Angel, the Helen Miller story won several awards and sparked similar initiatives in other cities. Helen handled the fame with characteristic humility, always pointing attention back to the people the foundation served. "I'm not special," she said in interview after interview. "I'm lucky. Caroline and Thomas gave me a chance. Now, I'm paying it forward." That's what redemption looks like. 1 year after Caroline found Helen in that alley, they held an anniversary celebration at the Riverside Center. Hundreds of people attended: residents, staff, volunteers, donors, city officials. Thomas gave a speech about transformation and second chances. Caroline spoke about hope and community. Helen stood with her daughter and grandchildren, living proof that lost things could be found. As the celebration wound down, Caroline stood with her father watching the crowd. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the old way of doing business?" Thomas smiled. "Regret? Caroline, I've made more money this year than ever before. Turns out doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. But even if we were losing money, no, I don't regret finding my soul again. Mom would be proud of you. She would be proud of both of us." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their community. It was not perfect. Problems remained, challenges surfaced daily, and some people still opposed their work. But something real had been built here, something that mattered. Divine favor, some called it. Providence. Destiny. Whatever the name, both Caroline and Thomas felt it. The sense that they were doing what they were meant to do, that their privilege had finally found its purpose. The celebration ended with residents performing songs and skits they had created. The talent show highlighted recovered gifts, rediscovered dreams, lives rebuilt from nothing. Caroline watched a former teacher perform poetry, a former musician play guitar, a former artist display paintings. These were not homeless people anymore. They were just people. And that was everything. Helen Miller sat in the medical clinic at the Riverside Center, reviewing intake forms for new residents. 6 months of working here had returned her to something like her old self, the capable nurse who once ran a pediatric ward. Her fingers, still bearing faint scars from frostbite, moved efficiently across the paperwork. Helen. A young woman stood in the doorway, holding a sleeping toddler. "Do you have time? My daughter has been coughing for 3 days." "Of course, Maria. Come in. Let's take a look." This was Helen's favorite part of the day, using her skills to help people who reminded her so much of herself. Maria was 26, had fled an abusive relationship, and ended up homeless with her 2-year-old daughter Sophia. The center had given them an apartment 3 weeks ago. Maria was training as a medical assistant, hoping to build a career in healthcare. Helen examined Sophia gently, listening to her lungs, checking her temperature. "Just a cold, nothing serious. But I want you to use this humidifier at night and give her plenty of fluids. If the cough gets worse or she develops a fever over 101, come back immediately." "Thank you," Maria said, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what we would do without this place. Without you. You would survive. That's what we do. But it's nicer not to have to do it alone." After Maria left, Helen completed her notes and prepared for her next appointment. These days she counseled residents beyond just medical care. Her story gave her credibility. People trusted her because she had walked their path and emerged on the other side. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, bringing the kids by after school. "They want to help at the food bank." Helen smiled. Her grandchildren, Emily and Jack, had become regular volunteers. They loved sorting donations and helping serve meals. Jessica said it taught them compassion and gratitude. Helen thought it taught them to see people, truly see them, before those people became invisible. The relationship with her daughter had healed slowly but completely. They had talked through painful memories and hard truths. Jessica had apologized for cutting her mother off, and Helen had apologized for the choices that led to their separation. But mostly they focused on the present and future, not the past. "I have my mom back," Jessica told anyone who would listen. "I thought I lost her forever. Now she's part of our lives again, and I'm never letting go." Helen had visited Jessica's home in Colorado Springs several times. She had her own bedroom there, decorated by Emily with drawings and flowers. The family had invited Helen to move in with them, but Helen preferred her small apartment at the center. She needed to be here, among people who still struggled, using her second chance to create more second chances. Caroline knocked on the clinic door. "Got a minute?" "For you?" "Always." Caroline sat down, looking tired but happy. "I wanted to run something past you. We're considering opening a pediatric clinic at the new facility in Aurora. Full medical services for residents' children. Would you be interested in managing it?" Helen's heart jumped. Pediatrics had been her passion before everything fell apart. "Really? You trust me with that?" "Helen, you're the reason this whole thing works. Your compassion, your story, your presence. Of course I trust you. But it would mean more responsibility, longer hours, probably more stress. I won't pressure you." Helen thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Yes. Absolutely yes. When do we start?" "Construction finishes in 6 weeks. We'll need to hire staff, order equipment, set up systems. It's a lot of work." "I'm ready. This is what I was meant to do. I lost it for a while, but now I have it back." They spent an hour planning, Helen's nursing expertise combining with Caroline's management skills. By the time Caroline left, they had outlined a comprehensive pediatric service that would serve all 7 facilities. That evening, Helen attended her weekly support group for residents who had been through family estrangement. 12 people sat in a circle, sharing stories and offering advice. Some had reconnected successfully. Others still struggled. All of them found comfort in knowing they were not alone. "I called my brother yesterday," said David, a former accountant who lost his family after a gambling addiction destroyed his life. "First time in 4 years. He hung up on me." The group offered sympathy and encouragement. Helen listened, then spoke. "It took my daughter 8 years to be ready to forgive me. 8 years. But she came back. David, your brother might not be ready yet. But that doesn't mean he never will be. Keep the door open. Keep working on yourself. Sometimes healing takes time." "But what if he never comes around?" "Then you still have us. Community isn't just blood family. It's the people who show up, who care, who stay. You have that, eh?" After the meeting, Helen walked through the center, checking on residents. She knew everyone by name now, knew their stories, their struggles, their dreams. She had become what Caroline once was to her, a witness, a supporter, someone who saw them. In the common room, she found 3 residents playing cards. In the computer lab, a man worked on his resume. In the dining hall, a woman practiced for a job interview with a volunteer. Life happened here, mundane and beautiful. Helen returned to her apartment, a simple 1-bedroom that was the finest place she had lived in 8 years. She had decorated it carefully, photos of her grandchildren, a painting Emily had made, a bookshelf full of mystery novels. It was hers. She was home. She thought about the alley where she almost died, the cold that nearly claimed her, the moment when she had given up hope. Then she thought about Caroline's face appearing through the snow, about hearing "stay with me" when she wanted to let go. Divine intervention, Helen believed. God had positioned Caroline to find her at exactly the right moment. And God had positioned her survival to awaken something in Thomas Harrison. And all of it had created this, a place of hope, a community of second chances, a monument to the possibility of redemption. Helen had been a catalyst, Caroline said, but Helen knew the truth. They were all catalysts. Every person who chose to help instead of walk past. Every person who offered a chance instead of judgment. Every person who saw the invisible and made them visible again. She opened her journal, a habit she had started 3 months ago. Each night she wrote about her day, recording not just events but emotions, lessons, and gratitude. Tonight, she wrote, I was dead in that alley. Not just dying, but dead in all the ways that matter. Dead to hope, to possibility, to love. Caroline brought me back to life. But more than that, she gave me a reason to live. Purpose. Value. A place in the world again. Tomorrow I'll help other people find their place. I'll use my nursing skills, my story, my hard-won wisdom. I'll be what Caroline was to me, a person who stops, who sees, who stays. This is my redemption. Not just surviving, but serving. Not just receiving a second chance, but creating them for others. I was given so much. Now I give it back. If you're reading this someday, whoever you are, remember, you're never too far gone. You're never too broken. You're never beyond hope. I was sleeping in an alley, minutes from death, absolutely certain my life was over. I was wrong. Sometimes God sends an angel in a burgundy coat. Sometimes strangers save your life. Sometimes everything changes in a moment. Stay open to miracles. They are more common than you think. Helen closed the journal and got ready for bed. Tomorrow would bring new residents, new challenges, new opportunities to serve. She looked forward to it. For the first time in 8 years, she looked forward to tomorrow. Trouble came from an unexpected direction. 6 months after the Helen Miller Initiative launched, 3 residents overdosed on opioids within a 2-week period. All 3 survived, but the media seized on the incidents. Harrison's homeless hub becomes drug den, one headline screamed. Billionaire's charity enables addiction, declared another. Conservative talk radio hosts attacked Thomas Harrison for enabling destructive behavior with taxpayer money. Despite the fact that the foundation was privately funded, the narrative stuck. Some city council members, never comfortable with the initiative, called for investigations and new regulations. Caroline faced the crisis head-on, holding a press conference to address the overdoses. We're dealing with people, not statistics, she told reporters. Some of our residents struggle with addiction. That's not a failure of our program. That's the reality of homelessness. What matters is that all 3 individuals received immediate medical care and are now in treatment. Before the center existed, they would have overdosed alone in alleys, probably dying. Now they are alive and getting help. So you're admitting the center enables drug use, one reporter pressed. I'm admitting that we serve human beings with complex problems. We have strict no-drug policies, regular inspections, and partnerships with addiction treatment services. But we're not going to throw people back on the streets because they struggle. That's not compassion. That's cruelty. The controversy intensified when Thomas's board members, still bitter about the initiative, leaked internal financial documents suggesting the foundation was bleeding money. The documents were selectively edited to make losses appear worse than they were, but the damage was done. Harrison Properties' stock price dropped 12% in 1 week. Emergency meetings were called. Shareholders demanded answers. Richard Morton, who had opposed the initiative from the beginning, led the charge to oust Thomas from his own company. This has gone too far, Richard told the assembled board. Thomas's personal crusade is destroying shareholder value. We need to stop the hemorrhaging and return to sound business practices. The foundation is not losing money, Caroline argued, showing actual financial reports. These leaked documents are manipulated. We're tracking ahead of budget in most categories. Even if that's true, Martha Keene interjected, the negative publicity is damaging our brand. Other projects are suffering. Investors are pulling back. This is affecting everything we do. Thomas sat quietly, listening to the attacks. His expression was calm, but Caroline could see the tension in his shoulders. This company was his life's work. The thought of losing it had to hurt. I think we need to vote, Richard said. Not on the initiative directly, but on Thomas's fitness to continue as CEO. The company needs leadership that prioritizes profit over personal projects. You mean leadership that prioritizes buildings over people, Caroline shot back. I mean leadership that remembers its fiduciary duty to shareholders. The vote was called. Thomas could be removed with a 2/3 majority of board votes. Caroline did the math quickly. They needed 6 votes to oust him. Richard had been building alliances for months, preparing for this moment. The vote went around the table. Richard voted to remove Thomas. Martha abstained. 3 members voted to remove. 2 voted to keep Thomas. 1 remaining member, an elderly woman named Grace Chen who had been with the company since its early days, had not voted yet. Grace looked at Thomas. "You've changed, Thomas. 10 years ago, you would never have taken these risks. You would have put profit first, always. Some of us worried you were becoming too hard, too focused on money at the expense of everything else." Thomas nodded. "You're right. I was. But this initiative, this foundation, I see the man I met 30 years ago. The hungry young developer who wanted to build something that mattered. You told me once that business should improve the world, not just extract from it. I thought you had forgotten that. I'm glad to see you remembered." She turned to the rest of the board. "I vote to keep Thomas as CEO. And I'm ashamed of this board for even considering removing him. He's doing what we should all do, using our success to help others. If you can't see the value in that, maybe you're in the wrong business." The vote failed, 3-4 with 1 abstention. Thomas retained control, but barely. The battle left scars. Several board members resigned in protest. Shareholders filed complaints. The company faced continued scrutiny and criticism. That night, Caroline found her father in his office, staring out at the city. "We almost lost everything today," Thomas said quietly. "But we didn't. Grace saved us. Grace saved me. And she was right. I had lost my way. All those years focused on nothing but growth and profit. I became someone my younger self would have despised. You found your way back. That's what matters." Thomas turned from the window. "What if they're right, though? What if I'm being irresponsible? What if I'm risking everything we built for a dream that can't sustain itself? Do you believe that?" "No. But I'm scared. I haven't been truly scared in 30 years. Success makes you forget what it feels like to risk everything." Caroline stood beside her father, looking out at Denver. "That man who saved you in Chicago, did he know what you would become? Did he know his kindness would result in a real estate empire? Of course not. But he helped you anyway. He took the risk. He believed you were worth it. Now you're doing the same thing for hundreds of people. Maybe some will fail. Maybe some will disappoint us. But some will succeed beyond our wildest dreams. We just have to believe they are worth the risk." "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from Helen. And from you, when you were being your best self." They stood together in silence, father and daughter, partners in a cause that threatened everything they had built while offering something far more valuable: purpose, meaning, redemption. The next morning brought worse news. A video appeared online showing 2 residents fighting in the Riverside Center parking lot. The video was taken out of context, edited to look more violent than it was, but it went viral. #Harrison Homeless Disaster trended on social media. Protests formed outside several facilities. Signs read, "Not in our neighborhood," and "Harrison Properties endangers communities." Caroline and her team worked frantically to control the damage, but the narrative had momentum. Helen called an emergency meeting with residents at all facilities. "Listen to me," she told the assembled group. "We're under attack. People want us to fail. They are looking for any excuse to shut us down. We cannot give them ammunition. That means zero tolerance for violence, drugs, or any behavior that confirms their worst stereotypes. I know that's not fair. I know we're being held to a higher standard than anyone else. But that's reality. Why should we have to be perfect?" one resident asked. "Regular people screw up all the time. Why can't we?" "Because we're not regular people in their eyes. We're a threat to their comfort. We make them uncomfortable. So we have to be better, work harder, prove ourselves constantly. It's exhausting and unfair, but it's how change happens." The residents committed to the higher standard, but the pressure was intense. Staff members burned out from the constant scrutiny. Volunteers dropped away, scared by the negative attention. Donations slowed. The foundation, once celebrated, now faced possible collapse. Caroline worked 20-hour days, fighting fires and managing crises. She lost weight, stopped sleeping properly, and pushed herself to the edge of exhaustion. Thomas worried about his daughter, but she would not slow down. "We can't let them win," Caroline said. "Too many people are depending on us." The crisis came to a head when the city council scheduled a vote on new regulations that would essentially make the transition facilities impossible to operate. The regulations required invasive monitoring, reduced capacity, and bureaucratic procedures designed to strangle the initiative slowly. Caroline and Thomas prepared to fight the vote, but they knew they were losing public support. The overdoses, the fight video, the constant negative media attention had eroded goodwill. Even supporters were questioning whether the initiative was worth the conflict. 3 days before the council vote, something unexpected happened. Helen received a phone call from her former supervisor at Denver General Hospital, where she had worked as a nurse 23 years earlier. "Helen, this is Dr. Patricia Morrison. Do you remember me?" "Of course, Dr. Morrison. How did you find me?" "I saw you in the documentary. I had no idea what happened to you after you left. I'm so sorry. We should have done more to help. That was a long time ago. Water under the bridge. I'm calling because I saw the news about the crisis your foundation is facing. Helen, I want to help. I've spoken with 12 other doctors who remember you, who worked with you. We all agree you were one of the best nurses we ever had. We want to testify at the council meeting. We want to tell them who you really are." Helen started crying. "You would do that?" "Of course. You saved lives for 23 years. You deserve people fighting for you now. Let us help." Word spread. Former colleagues, former patients' families, people Helen had helped decades ago, all reached out. They organized a counter-protest, a show of support for the foundation. By the day of the council vote, hundreds of people lined up to speak in favor of the initiative. The council chambers filled beyond capacity. Caroline, Thomas, and Helen sat in the front row, watching as speaker after speaker defended their work. Dr. Morrison testified first, describing Helen's career, her compassion, her skill. "If Helen Miller vouches for this program," she said, "then it deserves your support. She knows more about caring for vulnerable populations than anyone in this room." Residents testified, sharing stories of transformation. Employers testified about hiring graduates of the program. Neighbors testified that their fears had been unfounded, that the facilities actually improved their communities. Then Maria, the young mother Helen had helped, stepped to the microphone holding her daughter Sophia. "6 months ago, my daughter and I slept in a car. I had left her father because he hurt us. We had nothing. I couldn't get a job because I had no address. I couldn't get an apartment because I had no job. The system trapped us. Then the Riverside Center gave us a chance. Not just housing, but hope. My daughter is healthy now. I'm training for a career. We have a future. Please don't take that away from other families who need what we needed." The council chambers erupted in applause. Caroline looked at Thomas, and both of them had tears in their eyes. The vote was called. The regulations failed, 7-4. The Helen Miller initiative would continue. As they left the chambers, reporters swarmed them for reactions. Thomas spoke simply. "This was never about us. It was about people like Maria and Sophia, like Helen, like everyone who just needs a chance. Thank you to everyone who believed in that vision." The crisis had been survived, but it left Caroline and Thomas exhausted and sobered. They had learned that doing good work did not protect them from opposition, that kindness had enemies, that the path forward would always be contested. But they had also learned that they were not alone, that community support could overcome organized opposition. That truth eventually emerged despite propaganda. That people, when given accurate information, usually chose compassion over fear. The hardest test had been passed. Now came the work of sustaining what they had built, of proving that their vision could endure not just opposition, but time. 3 years after Caroline found Helen in the alley, the Helen Miller Initiative had grown beyond anyone's initial dreams. 14 facilities operated across Colorado, serving over 2,000 individuals. The model had been replicated in 6 other cities. Thomas and Caroline received national recognition, but they consistently deflected attention to the residents whose lives demonstrated the program's success. Helen stood in the newly opened pediatric clinic in Aurora, watching nurses care for children of residents. The clinic was a domain, designed according to her vision, staffed by people she had trained. This, she thought, was what redemption looked like. Not just recovering what was lost, but building something better from the ruins. Her phone rang. Jessica. Mom, turn on Channel 7. You're not going to believe this. Helen found a TV in the break room and switched to the local news. A reporter stood outside Denver General Hospital, where the story had begun. In a surprising development, the reporter said, Denver General Hospital has announced a new partnership with the Helen Miller Foundation. The hospital will provide comprehensive medical services to all foundation residents, including mental health treatment, addiction counseling, and dental care. This partnership, hospital administration says, honors one of their own. The camera cut to Dr. Morrison, now the hospital's chief of staff. Helen Miller worked here for 23 years. She was an exceptional nurse who fell through the cracks when our system failed her. This partnership ensures we never make that mistake again. We're proud to support her foundation and the incredible work they do. Helen sat down heavily, overwhelmed. The hospital that employed her, that she left in shame and desperation, was now partnering with her. Full circle, she thought. Complete redemption. Caroline arrived at the clinic an hour later, bursting with news. Did you see? I saw. I can't believe it. Believe it. And there's more. 3 major foundations have committed funding for the next 5 years. We're fully sustainable now, Helen. We don't have to worry about money anymore. They hugged, laughing and crying simultaneously. The constant financial pressure had been exhausting. Knowing they could focus on service rather than fundraising felt like lifting a weight from their shoulders. How's your dad handling all this? Helen asked. He's planning something. Won't tell me what, but he has that look. Thomas Harrison's announcement came 2 days later. He called a press conference at the Riverside Center, the place where it all began. Media, staff, residents, and supporters filled the common room. 3 years ago, Thomas began, my daughter reminded me that success without purpose is just accumulation. She showed me that real wealth isn't what you keep, but what you give. Today I'm announcing that Harrison Properties is restructuring completely. He paused, letting tension build. We're converting Harrison Properties into a benefit corporation. 50% of all profits will go directly to the Helen Miller Foundation in perpetuity. We're also committing to building affordable and transitional housing exclusively. No more luxury apartments. No more commercial spaces that sit empty. Every building we construct will serve people who actually need housing. The room erupted. Caroline stared at her father in shock. This was more radical than anything they had discussed. He was essentially giving away half the company. Furthermore, Thomas continued, I'm stepping down as CEO. Caroline will take over leadership of Harrison Properties. I'll serve as chairman of the foundation, working directly on program development and expansion. It's time for the next generation to lead. After the press conference, Caroline cornered her father in his temporary office. You can't just give me the company. I'm not giving you anything. You've earned it. You've proven yourself over 3 years. You're ready. But this is your life's work. No, Thomas said gently. This company was my life's work. The foundation is my life's purpose. There's a difference. I finally understand that. What would Mom think? She would say it took me long enough to figure it out. They laughed, the easy laughter of people who understood each other completely. 3 years ago they had been distant, cordial but not close. Now they were true partners, united by shared vision and genuine love. The transformation of Harrison Properties sent shockwaves through the real estate industry. Some competitors mocked Thomas as naive. Others quietly followed his example, realizing that social responsibility and profit were not mutually exclusive. Several major developers announced their own initiatives to address homelessness and affordable housing. Thomas's former board members, the ones who had tried to oust him, watched his success with mixed emotions. Richard Martin, who had led the opposition, reached out to Thomas 6 months after the restructuring. I was wrong, Richard said simply. About everything. I thought you were destroying the company. Instead, you transformed it into something that actually matters. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, Thomas replied. Want to join us? We could use someone with your financial expertise. You would take me back after everything. Everyone deserves a second chance, Richard. I believe that more than ever now. Richard joined the foundation board, bringing several other former skeptics with him. The organization grew stronger with diverse perspectives and increased expertise. Caroline learned that redemption extended beyond just homeless individuals. It included wealthy people who had lost their way, who needed to remember their humanity. Helen's family expanded when her son-in-law's parents, after hearing the whole story, embraced her as part of their family. Holidays became large, joyous affairs with 3 generations celebrating together. Helen had gone from complete isolation to being surrounded by love. On the 3-year anniversary of the night Caroline found her, Helen organized a celebration at the Riverside Center. Every resident, past and present, was invited. The event became a reunion, a testament to transformation and perseverance. Caroline gave a speech to the assembled crowd. 3 years ago, I walked past homeless people every day without seeing them. Then one night, divine providence positioned me to look twice at an alley. That moment changed everything. Not just for Helen, not just for my father and me, but for thousands of people who now have hope where before they had despair. She looked at Helen, who stood with her family. Helen teaches us that no one is beyond redemption, that you can lose everything and still find your way back, that second chances are real if we're brave enough to give them and accept them. She looked at her father. Dad teaches us that it's never too late to remember who you really are, that success means nothing if it's built on ignoring suffering, that true wealth is measured in lives changed, not dollars accumulated. She looked out at the residents. And all of you teach us that people are stronger than their circumstances, that with support, compassion, and opportunity, human beings can overcome almost anything. You are the proof that this works. You are the reason we keep going. The celebration lasted into the night. Residents shared their stories. Children played together, some born into the program, others brought here by parents who had nowhere else to go. Music played, food was served, community thrived. Thomas found himself in conversation with a young man named Marcus, who had entered the program 2 years earlier. Marcus now worked as a certified public accountant, helping other residents manage their finances and prepare for independent living. Mr. Harrison, Marcus said, I need to tell you something. Before I came here, I had given up. I was ready to die. But this place saved my life. More than that, it gave me purpose. I'm helping people now, using my skills to make a difference. Thank you for building this. You built it, Thomas corrected. You did the hard work of rebuilding your life. We just provided the foundation. The house is all yours. Later, as the celebration wound down, Caroline, Thomas, and Helen stood together watching the crowd. 3 people from completely different worlds, brought together by cold, coincidence, and courage. 3 people who chose to see each other, to help each other, to build something that transcended their individual stories. I've been thinking about that stranger in Chicago, Thomas said. The one who saved me. I never found him, never got to say thank you. For years that bothered me. But now I understand. I don't need to thank him directly. I thank him by doing for others what he did for me. The gratitude flows forward, not backward. That's beautiful, Dad. You know what's more beautiful? Watching you lead this work. Watching you become someone who changes the world instead of just decorating it. Your mother would be so proud. She would be proud of both of us. Helen cleared her throat. I have something to say. Something I've been preparing for this night. She pulled out a piece of paper, hands trembling slightly. I wrote this down because I knew I would get too emotional to remember it all. 3 years ago, I was dying in an alley. I had lost everything, my husband, my home, my daughter, my purpose. I was invisible, forgotten, worthless. Then Caroline appeared through the snow like an angel, and she said the 3 words that changed my life, stay with me. Her voice broke, but she continued. I stayed. And in staying, I found out that redemption is real. That second chances exist. That love conquers fear, hope defeats despair, and community triumphs over isolation. I found my daughter again. I found my career again. I found myself again. All because one person stopped to see me. She looked at Caroline and Thomas. You too taught me that wealth isn't about money. It's about generosity. Success isn't about accumulation. It's about contribution. Life isn't about what you keep. It's about what you give away. Thank you for giving me back my life. Thank you for letting me help give others theirs. There were no dry eyes in the room. The three of them embraced, an unlikely family forged in crisis and sealed in purpose. As the night ended and people departed, Caroline stood alone in the common room where so much had happened. She thought about the woman she used to be, empty and aimless despite her privilege. She thought about the woman she had become, tired and challenged but deeply fulfilled. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she did not recognize. My name is James. I saw your documentary. I've been living in my car for 6 months. Is it too late to apply to your program? Caroline smiled and immediately replied, It's never too late. Call this number tomorrow. We'll help you. Never too late. That was the lesson of these 3 years. That was the message the Helen Miller Initiative proclaimed to anyone who would listen. It's never too late to change. Never too late to help. Never too late to become the person you were meant to be. She locked up the center and walked to her car. The Denver night was cold but clear, stars visible above the city lights. She drove home thinking about James, whoever he was, and the hundreds more like him who would reach out tomorrow, next week, next month. Each one a chance to repeat the miracle. Each one an opportunity to whisper through the darkness, Stay with me. The work would never end. There would always be more people who needed help, more crises to manage, more opposition to overcome. But that was okay. That was the point. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was a journey. And Caroline was honored to walk it alongside her father, alongside Helen, alongside everyone who believed that second chances were worth fighting for. She pulled into her parking garage and took the elevator up to her penthouse. The apartment was the same, but she was different. Success no longer meant accumulation. It meant service. Wealth no longer meant possession. It meant possibility. Before bed, she did what she had done every night for 3 years. She prayed, thanking God for positioning her to look twice at an alley, for giving her the courage to stop, for bringing Helen and her father together, for allowing her to be part of something bigger than herself. Guide us forward, she whispered. Help us serve more people. Give us wisdom and strength. And thank you, always thank you, for second chances. She fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about James who lived in his car, about all the invisible people who would become visible again if someone just stopped to see them. The billionaire's daughter had fed a freezing homeless woman. Her father's next move had shocked everyone. But the real shock, the lasting miracle, was not in the dramatic gestures or the grand initiatives. It was in the quiet daily work of seeing people, helping people, loving people. It was in the thousand small acts of kindness that added up to transformation. It was in the belief that every human being, no matter how far they had fallen, deserved a chance to rise again. That was the legacy. That was the victory. That was love conquering all. You too taught me that wealth isn't about money. It's about generosity. Success isn't about accumulation. It's about contribution. Life isn't about what you keep. It's about what you give away. Thank you for giving me back my life. Thank you for letting me help give others theirs. There were no dry eyes in the room. The three of them embraced, an unlikely family forged in crisis and sealed in purpose. As the night ended and people departed, Caroline stood alone in the common room where so much had happened. She thought about the woman she used to be, empty and aimless despite her privilege. She thought about the woman she had become, tired and challenged but deeply fulfilled. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she did not recognize. My name is James. I saw your documentary. I've been living in my car for 6 months. Is it too late to apply to your program? Caroline smiled and immediately replied, It's never too late. Call this number tomorrow. We'll help you. Never too late. That was the lesson of these 3 years. That was the message the Helen Miller Initiative proclaimed to anyone who would listen. It's never too late to change. Never too late to help. Never too late to become the person you were meant to be. She locked up the center and walked to her car. The Denver night was cold but clear, stars visible above the city lights. She drove home thinking about James, whoever he was, and the hundreds more like him who would reach out tomorrow, next week, Next month. Each one a chance to repeat the miracle. Each one an opportunity to whisper through the darkness, "Stay with me." The work would never end. There would always be more people who needed help, more crises to manage, more opposition to overcome. But that was okay. That was the point. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and Caroline was honored to walk it alongside her father, alongside Helen, alongside everyone who believed that second chances were worth fighting for. She pulled into her parking garage and took the elevator up to her penthouse. The apartment was the same, but she was different. Success no longer meant accumulation. It meant service. Wealth no longer meant possession. It meant possibility. Before bed, she did what she had done every night for 3 years. She prayed, thanking God for positioning her to look twice at an alley, for giving her the courage to stop, for bringing Helen and her father together, for allowing her to be part of something bigger than herself. "Guide us forward," she whispered. "Help us serve more people. Give us wisdom and strength. And thank you, always thank you, for second chances." She fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about James who lived in his car, about all the invisible people who would become visible again if someone just stopped to see them. The billionaire's daughter had fed a freezing homeless woman. Her father's next move had shocked everyone. But the real shock, the lasting miracle, was not in the dramatic gestures or the grand initiatives. It was in the quiet daily work of seeing people, helping people, loving people. It was in the thousand small acts of kindness that added up to transformation. It was in the belief that every human being, no matter how far they had fallen, deserved a chance to rise again. That was the legacy. That was the victory. That was love conquering all.